The first light of morning arrived slowly over Willow Creek, painting the fields with soft shades of gold, while a cool mist drifted gently across the open meadows. Birds greeted the sunrise with cheerful songs, and the fresh scent of pine trees mixed with the fragrance of damp grass after the gentle rain from the night before. Margaret woke before sunrise just as she had for most of her life. She quietly prepared 2 cups of tea and placed homemade blueberry muffins into a small picnic basket. Before long, Emily joined her wearing a light sweater and comfortable walking shoes. "You look excited," Emily said with a smile. "I have been waiting many years to visit this place again," Margaret answered. The 2 women stepped outside where the air felt cool and peaceful. Their footsteps crunched softly over the gravel driveway before they followed a narrow trail leading behind the farmhouse. The path wound through tall wildflowers where butterflies floated lazily from blossom to blossom. Sunlight sparkled on tiny drops of dew, making the entire meadow appear covered in diamonds. "Everything looks magical this morning," Emily whispered. "That is because most people sleep through the most beautiful hour of the day," Margaret replied. As they continued walking, Margaret shared stories that Emily had never heard before. "When your grandfather and I were newly married, we had very little money. We could not afford vacations or expensive dinners. So every Saturday morning we packed sandwiches and walked through these woods. We believed every trail led to a new adventure. Were you ever disappointed that you did not have more?" Margaret smiled gently. "Not even once. We learned early that happiness grows much faster than money if you water it with gratitude." Emily quietly thought about those words while birds fluttered between the branches overhead. After nearly half an hour, the narrow trail reached a small wooden bridge crossing a gentle creek. Crystal clear water flowed over smooth stones, creating the most relaxing sound imaginable. Emily stopped to admire it. "I never knew this place existed." "Most people do not," Margaret said. "Henry built this bridge himself almost 50 years ago." Emily carefully crossed the weathered boards while running her fingers across the old wooden railing. "He really built all this, every board, every nail, every beam." Margaret smiled proudly. He said, "A bridge should help people reach beautiful places." On the other side of the creek, another winding trail climbed slowly toward a quiet hill covered with tall oak trees. Their leaves danced softly in the gentle morning breeze, creating a peaceful whisper that surrounded them like nature itself was telling an old story. Soon they reached the top. Emily stopped completely speechless. Before them stretched an endless view of rolling hills, sparkling lakes, distant farms and forests reaching all the way to the horizon. The morning sun bathed everything in warm golden light. "It is beautiful," Emily whispered. Your grandfather called this Sunrise Hill? Margaret said he proposed to me right here. Emily turned toward her with surprise. Really? Margaret laughed softly. He was so nervous he nearly dropped the ring into the grass. They both laughed together. Margaret slowly walked toward an enormous oak tree standing alone near the edge of the hill. Its thick branches stretched wide like welcoming arms. She rested one hand against its rough bark. This tree has watched our entire love story. Emily noticed faded initials carved low into the trunk. H and M, they are still here. Yes. Margaret closed her eyes for a quiet moment. Some promises become part of the world around us. The breeze grew slightly stronger, carrying the sweet scent of blooming clover across the hill. Emily spread a small blanket beneath the tree, while Margaret opened the picnic basket. They enjoyed warm tea, fresh muffins, and peaceful silence while watching clouds drift slowly overhead. After breakfast, Margaret reached inside her coat pocket and removed a tiny silver key. Emily looked puzzled. What does that open? Something your grandfather asked me to keep safe. Margaret stood and walked behind the oak tree where thick vines covered an old wooden fence. Carefully, she moved the vines aside, revealing a small weathered door built into the hillside. Emily stared in amazement. I have never seen that before. Almost nobody has. Margaret unlocked the tiny door. Its rusty hinges creaked softly as it opened. Inside rested a small stone room no larger than a garden shed. Warm sunlight entered through the doorway, revealing handmade wooden shelves filled with carefully wrapped boxes. Old photographs, journals, and glass jars containing dried flowers. Emily stepped inside slowly. It feels like stepping back in time. That is exactly what it is, Margaret answered. Your grandfather called this our memory room. Whenever something truly special happened, we placed a reminder here. Emily picked up a tiny wooden toy boat. Did Grandpa make this? He did. The summer your mother turned 6, they spent weeks building little boats for the creek. Emily smiled as she imagined the scene. Nearby rested a faded blue ribbon. Margaret gently picked it up. This was from the county fair, where Henry somehow won me the largest teddy bear, despite insisting he had terrible aim. She laughed quietly. He missed every practice throw, but somehow made the winning shot when it mattered. Emily continued exploring. Old family photographs rested beside pressed flowers, birthday cards, handwritten recipes, children's drawings, and tiny souvenirs collected across decades. Each object carried a story. Each story carried love. On the highest shelf, Emily noticed a beautifully carved wooden box. Unlike everything else, it appeared untouched. Grandma, what is inside this one? Margaret became unusually quiet. For a long moment, she simply looked at the box. Finally, she lifted it down with great care. "Your grandfather asked me not to open this until I felt ready. Have you ever opened it?" Margaret slowly shook her head. "Not once." Emily looked surprised. After all these years, some gifts arrive exactly when they are meant to. Margaret carefully turned the silver key in the tiny lock. The lid opened with a soft click. Inside rested only three things: a folded letter, a black and white photograph, and a tiny velvet pouch. Margaret picked up the photograph first. It showed Henry standing beside the very oak tree outside, smiling with the bright, hopeful face of a young man. Written across the bottom were simple words for our future family. Emily felt tears warming her eyes. "He believed all of us would be here one day. He always believed in tomorrow," Margaret whispered. Next, she unfolded the letter. Her hands trembled slightly. The paper had yellowed with age, but Henry's handwriting remained as clear as ever. "My dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, then time has continued its quiet journey, just as we always knew it would. Perhaps our hair has turned silver. Perhaps our grandchildren now laugh, where we once dreamed together. I hope you remember that every ordinary day we shared became the greatest adventure of my life. Never measure your happiness by what you owned. Measure it by every hand you held, every laugh you shared, and every sunrise you watched beside someone you loved. If our family ever forgets what truly matters, bring them back to this hill. Let the wind remind them. Let the trees remind them. And let this place teach them that love is the only treasure that grows larger. Each time it is shared, Margaret lowered the letter. Neither woman spoke. The silence itself felt full of meaning. Finally, Emily wrapped her arms around her grandmother. "Thank you for bringing me here." Margaret smiled through quiet tears. "I think this place has been waiting for you, Emily." Gently lifted the final item from the wooden box. The tiny velvet pouch felt surprisingly heavy. She looked toward Margaret. "Should I open it?" Margaret nodded slowly. "Yes. I believe your grandfather wanted you to." Emily loosened the small drawstring and carefully poured its contents into her hand. A tiny brass compass rested in her palm. Its polished surface reflected the morning sunlight. Engraved on the back were simple words that made both women smile. "Home is wherever love leads you." Emily held the compass close to her heart. At that very moment, a gentle breeze swept across Sunrise Hill, rustling the great oak tree above them. As though somewhere beyond the quiet morning, Henry himself was smiling, watching his family continue the journey he had begun so many years before.